Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Tensions across the Taiwan Strait continue to boil. Over the weekend, on Saturday, the Ministry of Commerce in Beijing said that it is studying further trade measures against Taiwan, 2 days after Beijing slammed a speech by Taiwan President William Lai Ching-te. On Thursday, at his keynote national speech, Lai said the People's Republic of China had no right to represent Taiwan. The Commerce Ministry statement claimed that the DPP, Taiwan's ruling party, has not taken any practical measures to lift trade restrictions, to use its words, on mainland China. Saturday's announcement from China's Commerce Ministry could signal tariffs or other forms of economic pressure against Taiwan in the near future. Then yesterday, Monday morning, local time, as we anticipated last week on China Update, the People's Liberation Army announced that they were undertaking the so-called Joint Sword 2024B. The drills concluded by the evening, making them shorter than the May Joint Sword 2024A exercises. The People's Liberation Army Eastern Theatre Command posted a video online about the exercises, which we are viewing here. According to the official PLA statement, the drills, quote, focus on joint sea-air combat readiness, patrol and blockade, and control of key ports and areas, strikes on sea and land targets, and the seizure of comprehensive battlefield control, so as to test the joint real combat capabilities of the forces of the command, end quote. Around 6 p.m., a PLA spokesman said the drills had been completed and that the PLA had, quote, fully tested the integrated joint operation capabilities, end quote, of its troops. The Taiwanese Defense Ministry said that between 5 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. on Monday, it detected 17 PLA naval vessels around Taiwan, as well as 17 vessels from the China Coast Guard. Taiwan said that China had flown 125 aircraft, a record, toward the island on Monday, exceeding the previous record of 103 in September of last year. Many flew from the aircraft carrier, the Liaoning. Quote, so far, no PLA vessels or aircraft have entered our territorial seas or airspace, end quote, a ministry spokesperson said. A Taiwan Presidential Office spokesperson speaking to reporters on Monday evening reiterated Taipei's emphasis on, quote, the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and the Indo-Pacific region, end quote, adding, quote, China should face the reality of the existence of the Republic of China, Taiwan, and respect the Taiwanese people's choice of a democratic and free way of life. It should cease military provocations that undermine regional peace and stability and stop threatening Taiwan's democracy and freedom. China should understand the goodwill expressed by the President on National Day and address its own domestic economic and livelihood issues, rather than persisting in using military force to coerce neighboring countries. End quote. Jiang Cheng, a researcher at the Association of Strategic Foresight, a Taiwanese think tank, observed on the drills, quote, by sending more Coast Guard vessels to patrol around Taiwan, Beijing hopes to establish a law enforcement presence, signaling that it has authority over the waters surrounding Taiwan. By occupying the position in the Western Pacific, its main objective is to strike Taiwan's east, where the Taiwanese military's combat power is preserved, while also dealing with possible interventions by the US military. End quote. Beijing's official state media commentaries on the drills have been particularly fiery. These represent fairly mainstream views within the country, and as such it is worth noting. For example, the military-run PLA Daily, in a special commentary, expressed, quote, Taiwan independence means war. The Chinese People's Liberation Army has the firm resolve and strong capability to defeat all Taiwan independence separatist activities and resolutely defend national sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. The so-called capabilities of Taiwan independence armed forces are nothing but ants trying to shake a big tree in the face of the Chinese people's will to maintain national unity and the PLA's powerful strength. End quote. And party mouthpiece, People's Daily, perhaps the most authoritative newspaper in China, hit out at US support for the island democracy. Quote, in a speech full of confrontational thinking and stubbornly adhering to the Taiwan independence stance, has been downplayed by some high-ranking US officials as routine, very moderate, and more restrained, while unreasonably urging Beijing to exercise restraint. This distortion of right and wrong by some US officials is an overt show of support for Taiwan independence, indicating that their commitment to not supporting Taiwan independence has not truly been put into practice. Some US officials are well aware of the dangers of Lai's new two-state theory. The current struggle against Taiwan independence separatism is not a contest of systems, but a struggle between unification and separation. End quote. The implications of this rhetoric are clear. Quote, the Taiwan side and US officials seem to think that Lai's Tenten speech, the pretext for these drills, was restrained, but clearly the PRC side did not, in a sign that probably nothing Lai says short of "we surrender" will be enough. The reaction may also be a reminder to some foreign investors tempted to get back into the PRC markets that the risks around Taiwan are not decreasing. End quote. On Monday, Matthew Miller, a State Department spokesperson, said the United States was, quote, seriously concerned, end quote, about China's military drills, which he called, quote, provocations to a routine annual speech, end quote, that risked escalating tensions in the region. Next up, yesterday we covered the disappointing inflation data, a sign of weak domestic demand still in the country. Today we need to cover the rest of the official economic data published yesterday, which similarly disappointed. China's loan expansion was poor in September, also a sign of still weak domestic demand, even though credit growth exceeded expectations thanks largely to a surge in government bond sales. Financial institutions offered 1.6 trillion yuan, $226 billion of new loans last month, according to data released by the People's Bank of China on Monday. That was below a median forecast of 1.9 trillion yuan in a Bloomberg survey of economists. Aggregate financing, a broad measure of credit, increased 3.8 trillion yuan, Bloomberg calculations showed, compared with 4.1 trillion yuan in the same month a year ago. The median estimate was 3.6 trillion yuan. Meanwhile, outbound shipments rose 2.4% from a year earlier in September, these are exports, to almost $304 billion, the lowest level since May, down from an 8.7% increase in August, according to data released yesterday, by the General Administration of Customs. Economists surveyed by the US-based Wall Street Journal had expected exports to have grown 6% last month. Shipments in key markets including Japan, South Korea and Taiwan all fell, while exports to the European Union and the US marked their slowest rise in at least 4 months. Russian purchases of Chinese goods soared to a record $11 billion. Monday's trade data showed that imports rose 0.3% on the year in September, slowing from August's 0.5% rise and undershooting the 1% growth expected by economists in the Wall Street Journal poll. An increase of 0.3% shows once again just how weak domestic demand is. Now, all this puts China's trade surplus at $81.71 billion in September, down from $91.02 billion in August, and the $89.8 billion projected in the Wall Street Journal survey. So, disappointment all around. Meanwhile, a piece published today by Chinese financial media outlet Caixin reports that, according to a new report published on Monday by the Ministry of Civil Affairs and the National Office on Aging, quote, at the end of 2023, for the first time, the population aged 60 and above in China exceeded 20%, indicating an increasingly severe degree of social aging. End quote. The Caixin authors observed that the increase in the elderly population, the dependency ratio, the ratio of elderly population to the working age population, has risen. The report shows that the dependency ratio for the population aged 65 and above has been rising for 10 consecutive years, reaching 22.5% in 2023, an increase of 9.4 percentage points from 2013. This means that every 4.4 working age people need to support one elderly person. Next up, the debate around how China can fix its economic crises continues. But just quickly, over the last week, the algorithm has been very unhappy with China Update. I do not know why. The number of new people the channel has been shown to has dropped by about 90%. It's unclear whether this is just a seasonal change, or whether something about the channel is now no longer on the friendly side of YouTube. All I can do is to continue to produce episodes that I think you all enjoy and hope that the algorithm changes its mind. But if you'd like to see the channel continue to grow, I have a huge favor to ask. Of course, liking is a tremendous help. It's just one click of the mouse. If you think you should be subscribed, it may be worth checking this, as people have been unsubscribed. If you're a regular viewer and you're not yet subscribed, it's a huge help if you subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you're on top of these updates when they're released. But the biggest thing you could do to help the channel would be to share this with someone who you think would get some value from it on a platform or on another video where you think people would be interested in this sort of content. Sharing the content now appears to be the only way in which the channel can grow, and hopefully this will turn the algorithm around. And I hope that this channel can continue to grow so that I can put more resources into it and transition to doing this as my full-time job. It's a tremendous pleasure to be able to produce these every day for you all, and I hope to continue doing so into the future. Thank you so much. Next up, and finally for today, Teng, director of the Wanbo New Economic Research Institute and a leading economist in China, published a widely shared piece this week supporting Liu Shijian's recent proposal for a 10 trillion RMB, 8% of 2024's expected GDP, stimulus to expand domestic demand. However, Teng goes further, arguing that even 10 trillion yuan may not be enough. According to Teng, the Liu Shijin plan, integrating consumption and investment stimulus with reforms, is seen as a politically savvy and necessary response to the current economic situation. The author argues that the stimulus should focus on expanding consumer spending rather than investment, as overinvestment has already led to excess supply and reduced economic efficiency. The current economic challenges in China, according to the author, are more severe than those faced during the 2008 financial crisis. Unlike the external shocks of 2008, today's challenges are structural, including industrial and urban overcapacity, slow income growth, and weak consumption. These structural issues have led to slower economic growth, deflation risks, falling real estate prices, a declining stock market, high youth unemployment, and increasing local government debt. The author stresses the urgency of implementing large-scale measures to address these challenges, suggesting that a 10 trillion yuan plan, though necessary, may be too conservative. He argues that a stimulus closer to 15 trillion yuan, $2.1 trillion US dollars, equivalent to 10 to 15% of GDP, would be more appropriate, citing similar measures taken by other countries like the US during the 2020 pandemic. A key recommendation is that the stimulus should focus on direct consumer subsidies, such as cash payments and vouchers, which can provide a greater macroeconomic multiplier effect by boosting consumption. In contrast, further expanding investment, especially in infrastructure, may only exacerbate supply surpluses. The author also highlights the importance of monetary policy coordination, suggesting that interest rate cuts and expanded monetary supply should complement the stimulus. In conclusion, the article argues that China's stimulus plan must prioritize consumer spending over investment to address structural demand deficiencies and ensure long-term economic prosperity. The focus should shift towards policies that stimulate demand and improve household income, rather than continuing large-scale investment projects that may no longer yield high returns. The piece has once again sparked debate in policy and academic circles, with our old friend, Peking University Professor of Finance Michael Pettis writing today, quote, "In my opinion, he is right, given that the multiplier for yet more supply-side stimulus is probably below 1, as he seems to suggest. The result is likely to be that China's total debt rises faster than reported GDP and much faster than economic value creation. And if the stimulus is implemented through local governments because of what Teng politely calls inertia, it will almost certainly be used to support the same old investment projects that have bankrupted local governments. With private sector investment constrained mainly by weak domestic consumption, however, the multiplier for demand-side stimulus is likely to be much higher than 1, although I doubt it is as high as 3, as he suggests. Where I might disagree with Teng is that while I think a large demand-side stimulus would certainly help in the short term, and would certainly help far more than more supply-side stimulus, I don't think it is sustainable. In the medium term, China still urgently needs a major and politically difficult structural shift in the way income is distributed. Nonetheless, it is well worth reading Teng's essay. I think it tells us a lot about how the debate in China is advancing. End quote. This last line in particular, I completely agree with. That is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Tuesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.